this gorgeous sunny day. No wind, beautiful weather. How many of you came from somewhere else where it might be really cold? Yay! Well, finally we got warmed up here. There we go. All right, look at this amazing all-woman panel. Yay! That's not to say that we don't have men here in the tent that paint awesome flowers, but we felt that this was a good one for the girls today. So, welcome. My name is Susan, and along with my husband and our awesome team of amazing helpers, we put together the Celebration of Fine Art for you every year. And Elizabeth was just asking, is this our third or fourth year of Art Discovery Series? I've lost track. Fourth? Fourth? At least four. So this is a fun way that we spend our Friday afternoons putting together a panel of some of our amazing artists and a different topic, and we just have a fun discussion about it. So every Friday we learn something new. We do have a couple of seats up front if anybody wants to come join us. You can share the front table, but my goodness, we're gonna have to stop telling our friends about this. We won't have enough space, or we'll get more chairs. So thank you for being here. We are on Facebook Live, so if anybody's watching, welcome. Enjoy our panel today, and I'm just gonna go, what was that, stage left to stage right, and introduce everybody, and then I'll have everybody tell a little bit more about themselves. But right next to me is Elizabeth Butler, new this year, even though I asked you to tell me that. Next to her is Beth Zink, who's been around quite a number of years. How many? 10 years. A decade. Wow. We've known each other a while. And next to her is Leslie Duke, and this, I think, is your fifth?
It's my fourth.
It's your fourth year. Oh, see, we started Art Discovery with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I remember.
And right next to her is Heidi Rosner, who I have known for probably 18 years? Many years, yes. So each of these women are impeccably dedicated to their work of art, and Floral happens to be something very near and dear to all of them. So I think we'll start with, I've done the formal introduction, but if each of you can just share with the crowd why florals? Like, what drew you to florals? And maybe tell us a little bit about you as you first take the mic. Something we might not know, where you're from, how long you've been painting, and why florals. So I'll have you start, Elizabeth.
Hi. No. Okay. Hi. Yes. So I'm Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful to be here. Also, this is my first year at the celebration, and before this, I was teaching art. So I've been doing that for a number of years. And I'm a native. I love Arizona, and born and raised here in Phoenix. I'm just really happy to be a part of this. Flowers was, that actually is something that's been recent for me in my art career. I originally was studying figurative and portrait painting, which is what I got my degree in, and I really love that, and I'm very passionate about the human form and faces and people, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we have around us. When I decided to make a career out of this, I just made a slight shift. Instead of going the figurative and portrait route, I really fell in love with the way I think flowers also kind of share some of those similar forms and shapes and curves, and there's just a lot of power and delicate femininity at the same time, which I think you find in a human form. It's both really delicate and very powerful, and that's what I love about flowers. And so that kind of is what really brought me to coming up with these floral compositions that I think really speak to beauty and fullness and abundance, and are delicate and powerful at the same time. So that's how I found, I guess, flowers, and that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm really loving it.
This is your...
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Beth Zink, and I've been painting flowers for as long as I can remember. My first introduction to flowers was after the long, cold Rhode Island winter. I was so glad blessed to see the little daffodils and crocus coming up, and they meant that spring was...
Closer. Microphone closer.
Okay. They meant that that winter was almost over. Then my mother drafted me into junior garden club. And I learned more about flowers there. When we moved to Arizona in 1986 and I saw my first spring bloom of the cactus flowers, I was absolutely blown away. Here were these nasty, gnarly, spiky plants that produced the most amazing blooms, and I was really taken by the cactus flowers. So that's pretty much cactus botanicals. I maintain the realism of the plants themselves, but amp up or play around with some more imaginative color in my compositions. But I like that bold, microscopic, up-close look, and that's pretty much what I'm known for.
And this is Beth's for
I'm Leslie Dew, and my work, I was right there. Thank you, the lovely Heidi. And I grew up spending summers with my grandparents, and they were both avid gardeners. Even though they were I'm from Utah, and they lived in a tiny, tiny little town, kind of out by a reservation, really deserty, but their garden was just always so lush and beautiful. And I would wake up every morning to them out in the yard, and I would just go out with them and just really savored those mornings with them. And so for me, going to flowers was almost an emotional choice. It was something that is just very nostalgic to me. It's very comforting, and yeah, so that's one reason I do them. I also just love their bright colors. I love being able to go to the wholesale flower markets and go and pick through and find fun things, and I'm so influenced by color. Color has always been something that fascinates me, the psychology of it, the workings of it, and so I love being able to get these beautiful living things that I can place in my still lives, which I generally have maybe some fruit or some birds, but those flowers, they just give that pop. And I love to paint from life. I rarely paint from photos. And something that I find really fascinating is that as I am painting these flowers, I'll have a setup over a few days, and they will change in front of me. And it's just amazing to be able to see that. And from day to day, things will change, and so my art changes a little bit. And if you come by and see it, you'll see that I do what I call smears. It's a very technical term, but I'll just kind of, I don't know, create a movement and a life to these living things that are commonly we call still lives when they're really not. So there you go.
Hi, thank you all for being here. I'm really grateful for your attendance and your attention. I'm Heidi Rosner, and I grew up in the Midwest where we grew a lot of our own food. So I had a garden as a kid. My 10th birthday, I got an apple tree for my birthday because that's what I wanted. I wanted an apple tree. But I've always been a gardener. I have not always been a painter. Like I said, I grew up in the suburb of Detroit, and my mom's favorite flower was the Oriental poppy. And see, one at the far end, that's my current piece. She loved poppies. They came up every spring, and the winter was just a disastrous amount of snow, not dissimilar to what they're experiencing right now in the Midwest. And she would bemoan the fact that, oh, the poppies are probably gone, they're not going to come back next year. And every year they came back over and over and over again. And I'll never forget when I was about 12 years old, there was a Georgia O'Keeffe exhibit that came to the Detroit Institute of Arts. And my parents loved to take us to museums or other cultural events. And we went to this exhibit, and I literally stood in front of the poppy, one of her poppies, which is an iconic image of Georgia O'Keeffe. And they went through the entire museum and came back, and I was still standing in front of that poppy staring. So they bought me a poster of that poppy, I hung it in my room, and then I went about my life. And I became a mechanical engineer, and I did all kinds of other things. And when I moved to Arizona in the early 90s, I didn't know anybody here, so I took a watercolor class. And that launched me into my painting career. All the while, I was an avid gardener, and I would continue gardening, and I always took photos of my flowers or my fruits and vegetables and things like that. And I never really thought much of it because I started as a landscape painter, and then, like Beth, this desert plant, what occurs to the desert plants when you add water, sometimes even when you add distress, is remarkable, and it really inspired me. I like to see the architecture in a flower. I think it's my engineering background causes me to want to see the exactitude of something and the precision in representing it. And so I get very close in on some of them, but I also do plants in a distant view as well. Almost all my specimens I've grown myself, except for the ones that are inspired by my travels. So it all came because I like to garden, and I went to a museum one day.
Mechanical engineer to extraordinary artist. I love that. That's a two-sided brain person, right? Yeah. So thank you guys for sharing a little bit of background. And just to, I don't think we touched it. Oil?
Yes.
Acrylic, oil, watercolor, primarily. Every once in a while people mix in other stuff, and also Elizabeth has been working with quite a bit of the gold and silver leaf as well. So all of you have this inspired by nature, and how many of you would just love to be able to paint flowers? Like, yeah, I'd like to be able to grow them. I am good at buying them, but really the best flowers of all is you buy a painting of a flower and they don't die. I like that. So, but Elizabeth, I know, so we have some gardeners, and I would love for, when we get back to you, Leslie, to talk a little bit about still lifes, but tell us how you go about putting together your creations. And you're more of a still life painter as well, although I would agree with Leslie, there's really nothing still about these paintings. So tell us how you come up with your subject.
Okay, so I start by buying lots and lots of flowers. It's really fun. Because it's like you open your car, it's just packed full of flowers. Because I need a lot to choose from, so I can arrange them. So then I make arrangements. I usually make a number of different arrangements. A lot of it is based on color and shape. So I don't have a particular flower that I necessarily want to paint, but I know I want a variation of sizes and usually a particular color palette. So I make a lot of different arrangements, and then I usually go outside and photograph them. Usually it's sunny here, so I don't have to worry about that, and I like the dramatic lighting, especially with eucalyptus leaves. They're really fun, just the cast shadows that happen from the direct sunlight. I really enjoy that. I also want a composition that's kind of high impact and a little dramatic, so I'm usually holding them up so you can kind of see me like this, you know? Eventually I'll get somebody to build me some contraption so it's not just like me and my arm here, but so far it's working out pretty well, just so that I can get flowers from a different perspective. The kind of impact that I feel they have is really overwhelming. You kind of walk upon something beautiful and it makes you, kind of takes your breath away. And I feel the same way, so I'm trying to capture that in my compositions, which is why they're usually kind of from above. So any way in which I can show you something in my artwork that you haven't seen before. So maybe you've seen tulips 100 times at the store or in a vase, but I'm trying to help us come out of that every day and make it a little bit more sacred and meaningful. So after I have these compositions and photographs, and I'll go through them and kind of look through them and start to put together the composition that I like the best. And then I work from a photograph for the bulk of it. Towards the end, I usually start editing, either adding in things that I think need to be there to kind of finish it off. Sometimes I'm taking things out from what's actually there. But so in the end, it's usually my reference is down and I'm just looking at what's on me, what's in front of me on the canvas, and some of that's the most fun part for me anyways, the very end. So, and then that, yeah. And I'll usually save those photographs, and sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 paintings that are based on that same day or those same arrangements, and I'll go back to that. But usually every month or so, I'm putting together a new arrangement to kind of work from. And yeah.
Do you have a favorite flower?
I think you said you did. No, I don't. I love flowers because I think they're very complex, and the way the light and shadow kind of works with these very translucent petals is really challenging. So anything that's challenging and colorful and complex, I'm very happy with, but no flower in particular.
I love the idea of looking up at the arrangement because we usually are looking down upon it, so that's great. I know somebody who might be able to do a contraption.
Oh, good.
I know a guy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh wait, one more question. Any favorite places you like to buy flowers?
I usually have to go to a number of places to get all the flowers that I want. It kind of depends. Camelback Flower Shop has just some of the most beautiful arrangements usually, so I'll even combine some of those pre-made arrangements and that if I like their color palette. But yeah, no, anywhere. Sometimes my backyard, but usually not enough.
So,
What was the question again?
I don't have any idea. I don't remember. But I think we'll go back to you. I love that you were in the garden club as a young girl, and then coming to Arizona. And how many of you who came from somewhere else just thought brown desert? Yeah. What did you think when you came here and you saw such desert blooms as this? And so where do you go for inspiration? Do you like to go to the Desert Botanical Garden? Do you like to go out in McDowell Preserve, your backyard? And just tell us about, you're primarily drawn to cacti. So just tell us about why.
When I first moved to Arizona in Scottsdale in 1986, we had a garden in our yard that had cactus blooms, and so I would walk my dog, and I would see other people's landscaping and see all these wonderful specimens. And yes, lots of trips to the botanical garden, but over the years, because everybody knows that Beth paints cactus flowers, I have an endless resource of friends that bring me great pictures. And I, like Elizabeth, like the contrast. I like the bold color, and I do amp up my own colors sometimes. But you'll see that I have a realistic prickly pear flower, but I'll make the red much more intense. I like to use a lot of complementary color, which is opposite colors, because opposite colors create drama and make your painting more vibrant. Black is the opposite of white, as we all know, but if you put red next to green, it's equally as great a contrast. Orange and blue are complementary, and so are yellow and violet. So you'll see those repeat throughout my portfolio a lot of those complementary colors because I want my paintings to really look like they're going to jump right off the wall. So I'm not a drama queen, but I like drama in my paintings.
I love that. We have this night bloomer cactus. I don't know what its name is, and it keeps multiplying. I don't know how many arms it's had, but a friend of mine made fun of me one time because, you know, Facebook, and I posted, every morning I run outside to see how many blooms, because I think one morning there was like 30 blooms, and there were the white ones. I don't know what it is.
It's a serious. When I was, I had a night bloomer too, and when my son was in college, and I'd say, well, you know, I can never find out when this plant is blooming. I see the bud during the day, and then the next day it's gone. And one Sunday morning, he came in and he said, Mom, I got home at 2 o'clock in the morning. Guess what? It was blooming.
Yeah, they'll hang on, but not for too long. And then they're all these little pods. But yeah, my friend was like, really? You run outside? And I go, well, sometimes I skip. It's very exciting. Very exciting. So, thank you. So, Leslie, you are known for your still lifes or unstill still lifes and the delicate nature with which you paint and the contrast. And did you love that Beth shared with us some of the complementary color concepts? Yeah, and that really does grab your attention and it captures your eye. You do a lot with color. I mean, all of you are terribly influenced by color, but you kind of touched on earlier some of your still lifes. Some of the flowers might be the fresh blooms just right after she brought them in, but then like I'm thinking of some of the lilies that have been in your paintings. Like there might be one like 3 days later that's kind of curled up a little bit, and the way you capture that and composition within your canvas, I think would be something that would be interesting for the folks to hear.
Yeah, sure. Trying to think a good way to talk about it. My still lives, well, first of all, I never thought I would paint still lives. I always thought of them as being kind of boring. But I stumbled in to still life, loved it, and wanted to create movement. And so when I was thinking about that, I hadn't actually started painting flowers. They scared me because they are so complex. The layers of petals, the way the light hits, they're just complex creatures. So I focused a lot on vegetables and fruit and yes, and berries and maybe a bird. And it was a challenge, a really fun challenge, to figure out a way to make my still lives to feel like they were in motion, that there was energy within those. I didn't want them to feel stale and stereotypical. So one day I was painting and experimenting, and I was frustrated with what was happening, and so I got out this scraper thing that is kind of like a spatula and just kind of scraped some paint away, and was blown away by what happened. It was just this beautiful mark and smear of color, and it was just what I was looking for. And so then I started to think about, okay, how do I continue along with this? And at first I was very methodical and used different compositional rules. Like the rule of thirds is one that you'll see a lot in my work. And just really tried to play with making sure that if there was a line like here, you've kind of got this this flower right here. There's a smear of red that kind of goes up through here, and that smear is very purposeful. It is very much leading your eye up through this canvas, and then you've got a little bit of a curve, and then a curve here, and it's hopefully leading the viewer's eye through here so that they don't get stuck and feel bored. And so when I first started, it was very much methodical, kind of thinking, you know, where am I going to be placing these? And the more I did it, the more intuitive it became. And so now I definitely am methodical about it still and think about my compositions, but it has become something where it's almost like I set up my still life. It's there in front of me. I'll put in some basic shapes on my canvas, and then I'm playing. It's like I'm playing almost a game of chess with this still life, where I'll paint something in and then feel like, you know, even though that might look really nice painted, I'm gonna just take it out because it feels like maybe it's too much, or maybe it'll make a fun mark, and so it's constantly developing, and for me, it's not a still experience, you know, it is this, it's like I am trying to breathe life into this thing, and so it's become very intuitive, but it still is, yeah, could go into compositional rules, but if you're interested in a few good books, come up to me and I'll give you some ideas, but so there you go.
Do you underpaint your canvas with any particular color?
Yeah, I usually use a color called Venetian red. It's one that's not too cool, not too warm. It's one that I like. And you'll see it throughout all of my paintings. It's that lovely little bit of reddish pink that kind of shows through and almost gives it this feel of a old deteriorating wallpaper or a fresco that's kind of deteriorated. I love that. Just something that's not quite so pristine, you know.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, now Heidi, I know you do not underpaint. So, how many of you are watercolor painters or have tried watercolor ever? So, how do you get white? It's the paper.
You save it.
You save the paper. So, I mean, Heidi, you have so much you could share. How travel has influenced, you kind of touched on that. But also, you're a watercolorist, and you have to, I mean, everybody thinks ahead, but you can't erase and you can't smear quite as easily as Leslie might be able to. So, enlighten us.
Can I just say, sitting here listening to my colleagues talk about their process, I was experiencing a bit of envy because I can't go in later and change my mind. I pretty much get one shot. So yes, with watercolor, you pretty much have to plan out the entire painting before you get your brushes wet, which means a fairly accurate drawing, really good idea of where you're going with your light and dark values, controlling where the light source is in your mind, juggling all of these balls while not violating the white space, so to speak, so that you can use that for what you need to use it for. So, yes, let me back up just quickly by saying the primary reason I picked something as a subject to paint is the light. And watercolor is really luminous as a medium, and so it's a natural that you would find subjects that have like an inner light to paint in watercolor. I'm always looking for the light source in a painting, which is why most of the subjects I pick are outdoors. I unlike you guys, I take my photos outside. I guess you do, Elizabeth, but they're growing and they're in the ground usually when I take my reference photo. I don't cut flowers and take them into a studio and work around them. So I'm waiting for the light to be right so I can take my photo. And if it happens to be a cloudy day, I'm looking at a subject on one of my trips, I'm not going to be able to get back to that spot. I have to play God and create the sunlight, because the light is the most important aspect for me to achieve the end result that I want. So you can see the poppy, for example, has a light source coming from here. All of these wonderful cast shadows occur and poppy petals are very translucent. Light shines right through them. They reflect light onto the other petals, so you're getting that reflected color. You get some cast shadows, you get shape shadows, like I call them shape shadows, especially in here where it creates a curve so that the piece doesn't look flat or two-dimensional when you're looking at it. So I like to create that by playing with the light. And that's what gives it shape and form. Sometimes I'm outdoors and I come across a flower market. Oh my God. So we were in France this last summer and we happened to be on Farmers Market Day walking through the town of Lyon, and it was peony season. Stop, right? I mean, peony season. And all of these buckets of peonies that were, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile, I'm not even exaggerating. It was just like peonies as far as you can see. I was paralyzed for a few minutes. I took it all in, and then as I walk along, and bright sun, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, so it's a great sun angle. I'm walking along going, oh, my husband's 100 yards in front of me. Are you ever gonna come along?
He was looking for the wine.
Wait, just one more picture. I think I took 2,000 pictures of the flower market that day, and I'm not even exaggerating, on my phone. And I had to upload them at the hotel because I ran out of space on my phone. But this particular peony called out to me when I was walking through the flower market. The sunlight, the curve of the petal, that yummy gold center that was just like a warm place in the middle of it all. I knew I had to paint it. And so I came back, and that was the first painting I did after our trip.
It's beautiful. How do you protect your white space?
Variety of reasons, a variety of methods. I usually paint my background first, and I'll use a mask to cover it, a resist, to cover the bloom so that I can get that really crisp edge. The petals, I will paint around edges and white spaces when I'm working the internal part of the bloom. The middles, I usually will mask out again so that I can get that sharp edge, and then I go in and paint each one of those little nuggets individually. It's my Zen time.
Yeah. And I meant to ask, when you sketch, you're actually like lightly with pencil, or what?
I actually don't sketch, I draw. Because it's got to be pretty precise for me, for watercolor, for the engineer brain, for all of that. I'd like to be pretty precise about my drawing, and I use watercolor pencils to draw so that they disappear when I paint.
Brilliant.
Magic!
Thank you. That's great. I didn't know that. I mean, I've known you forever. I didn't realize you use watercolor pencils. It's so smart.
Tools of the trade. When you use the right tool for the job, it is amazing how much simpler it becomes.
So I think another question, we can go backwards now too, is color value. Can you explain value, and how do you change color value, for instance, with watercolor? What are you mixing in or out?
Color and value are different. Value is the light or darkness of an area. For example, this is a 0% value, and this is like a 90% value. So it's the contrast of light to dark. And I love, when I'm doing a painting, to put some of my lightest lights right next to some of my darkest darks to give you that wow punch, yummy goodness. And that's what grabs people's attention when they look at, they're like, oh, I love this area right here. And I'm thinking to myself, that's because it's a 090. Yep, I did it. Beautiful. So that's the value part. Color, there's so many things I can talk about with color. Like Beth, I love to use complementary colors in my compositions because it makes subjects pop. But I also have started using a few of my pieces where I do a monochromatic theme, and I'm liking that too. It's kind of new for me, but I'm sticking within one or two different hues of a color, and I like it. It's fun. Just something different to try.
Great, thanks. And Leslie, one of the things I love everything about your paintings, but some of your paintings we have the deep dark background like we see now with the vibrant pop of color, and then others, and we hope that you'll walk around after and see, but others we have this big beautiful white or light canvas. So you use contrast and that a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it really depends on the kind of mood that I'm in. If I'm feeling more dramatic, then I guess I'll use a darker background. And you know, especially I love lemons. When I come to Arizona, it's just lemons are everywhere. They're falling off of trees. They're hanging everywhere. And the longer I've been here over the years, I find citrus with little clippings all the time in my studio that friends have dropped by, which is very nice. I'm overwhelmed with lemons. But lemons, there are certain colors that just sing on a dark background, and yellow is one of them. So, like this one, they're just gorgeous. They're just these normal things, but they just are beautiful. With light backgrounds, it's just a different kind of a mood, and it really just depends on the kind of mood that I'm in. But when they're light backgrounds, I always have, and I'm sure everyone could say this, there's no such thing as just a true white. Every white has some kind of color mixed into it, whether it's more of a yellow white. I mean, you'll have noticed that if you have several different kinds of white shirts, and one is that you wear it in nice places and the other one you exercise in, you notice that one is probably more of a clean white than the yellower white. And so when I am creating something that has a white background, I am thinking about color theory and what kind of, if, for example, I have a painting in my studio right now that it has a lot of blue in the background, but it's a very subtle blue, and it has some white in there, and there are lots of pink and red flowers. And so in my background, I consciously thought, okay, how do I make those flowers really sing? And that is by adding a little bit of their complement into my white. And it might be so subtle that you don't even notice, but just by paying attention to those kind of subtleties and knowing those little academic tricks, it just makes a painting come to life.
I think that explains a lot for those of us who are not actual artists. We don't understand things, maybe, but we know we love them. How many of you have felt that? Like, I have no idea how they did it, but I love it. Yeah. So, those little secrets. And about white, how many of you have ever tried to pick out white paint for your house? Hey, go get a can of white paint. There's about 700 shades of white. Yeah. So, okay, you touched on this already, the complementary colors, and I think Heidi covered some of it too. Like, you've got your darks and your white lights, and do you, aside from using white, what do you like to blend in to change, like your pinks or your?
Well, I work from my photographs, and I pretty much follow the lead. I paint what I see. You know, when I'm teaching adults painting, I say, you know, don't think about it. No thinking. Just paint what you see. If you want something to be realistic, paint the shape that you see, and blend your colors one into the other, which is more easily said than done sometimes.
Without making it muddy?
Without making it muddy. Also, when I think about value, I always say values have nothing to do with ethics or morals in painting. Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. If you think about weight of a color, white is your lightweight. White is on a scale of 10. White is 1, and black is 10. And any color in between is partway through. Like Leslie was saying about yellow. Yellow is great against a black background because on a scale of 1 to 10, yellow is probably right there around 2. And and black, dark background is the other end of the spectrum. So we all try, and know what we all do with our painting style is to create light and shadow all over the painting. And that's what creates contour. That's what shows you form. We're all trying to create something that's three-dimensional on a two-dimensional surface. And that's how we do it, by just changing the lightness or darkness of the color, changing its value, and that's what gives the curvature of a petal or any other object that you're painting.
That's brilliant. I love that 3D and 2D world. Like, how do you do that? We were talking about that earlier. Sammy wanted to know if I was an artistic. I'm like, nah, I have some paintings I did in high school, but they're all flat. Because I didn't understand how to create depth. How do you do that with?
Yes. So it is all about value, light and shadow. That creates form, which is why I think we've all said that the lighting is really important to creating our composition. Without light, then there is no shadow, then you have no form, and everything's flat. Working on gold and silver leaf has been really interesting because the leaf acts as a changing value, and because of the way the light reflects off of it, it's essentially a reflective surface, so the value changes depending on what part of the painting is getting direct light or not. So it also acts as a temperature. So temperature meaning warm or cool colors underneath it. So I have in my studio some paintings on gold leaf, and so it has a very warm undertone to everything, and those same colors on silver leaf look quite different because there's a much cooler tone underneath all of the colors. So it's been really fun for me to experiment with that a little bit and let some of the leaf show through in certain areas, so it really ends up harmonizing the painting since there's this either warm or cool effect going on through the whole piece. And so it's an interesting value because value is relative anyways. It depends on what it's next to, and so it's kind of like the only value in a painting that changes depending on even where you're standing. So that's fun.
Well, you certainly, all of you have done your part in making everything more beautiful and much to enjoy. I'd like to always give our audience a chance to ask questions or share feedback, and we're going to start right here.
The reason the good Lord made flowers was to make seeds. In order to make seeds, you have to have pollinators. There's not an insect in the whole house. There's no birds, there are no moths, no nothing.
Oh, Leslie, yep.
You see, the peony without aphids and ants just doesn't exist.
Well,
Well,
that's
come
true.
by my studio, you'll see a couple of bees in the one that I'm working on. So.
You got some
and
bees?
Heidi has some burns too.
We had a bee in the tent earlier. And Bryce Pettit has an amazing honeycomb sculpture with bees and honey. It's just fabulous. But you are right. True to life, we got to have a bird or a bee in there. Wendy.
Heidi, you were talking about masking. Could you talk a bit more about it? How do you do it?
The question is, can she share a little bit more about masking and what that means?
When I mask something, I use a fluid and I brush it on and I paint around it. I let it dry. I paint around it and then I remove the masking fluid.
What is the masking?
There's about 20 different brands on the market. It's called masking fluid, and
Is it like a dam? Like a whole,
What?
like a dam?
Yeah, it's like if you put masking tape on a wall to paint a straight line when you're painting your house. It's a similar kind of thing, but it's in fluid form. But make sure you use a junk brush to put it on because it'll ruin your brush. And if you want to come by my studio, I'll show you what I use.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So I'm a novice, but I do have a novice question. What is it? I think you call it theory of thirds or something.
Rule of thirds.
Yeah.
Will you please share
Or
about
theory
that?
of thirds. I know what you mean. It's basically, it's very easy. You divide something into three, both ways. So horizontally and then vertically. Well, or you don't have to do that. But anyway, that's what I do. And then basically, it's this great thing where if you put your subject in 2/3 of the canvas and then leave 1/3 not having that subject, it instantly balances it. You can also do this great thing where when you do have the vertical line, so it looks like it's some kind of a checkerboard, or I guess a tic-tac-toe, where those crosshairs are, you instantly know that about right here, and right here, and right here, and right here, those are great spots to put some kind of a focal point because for whatever reason, it's aesthetically pleasing to us and we automatically go to that. You can also use these boxes as well for that, and that's what it is.
You look up golden means on your phone.
The golden mean?
It's all about golden beans, M-E-A-N-S, means. We'll tell you all about it. The Greeks developed that in the 1300s and we're still using it today.
The golden mean developed or conceptualized by the Greek. Now, another thing in exhibiting or displaying your work of art, thank you.
Every week, same time.
I try to arrange that for every Friday, so they're nodding to us. And I think that's a little throwback to our aeronautical engineer down there who worked on the NASA stuff, Heidi. So, where were we going? Oh, displaying your art. And sometimes people have too many things, so you don't know what to look at. So even exhibiting your art, the eye has a certain way it wants to travel, and it can only absorb so much. Do you agree with that? So displaying your art?
Oh yeah, definitely. You can use it almost with anything, really. It's just a visual rule. The way you dress, absolutely. The way you hang things, the way you place things. Even if you're a chef, I'm sure you think about that. It's just, it's the whole thing.
Although there's no such thing as too much art.
Oh, no, there's no such thing as too much art.
Definitely not. Okay, other questions? Anyone? Yes, please.
Question about the silver leaf. Are you putting that on the whole painting first and painting on top of it, or how do you apply it?
The question was about how I use the silver leaf in the painting. So that painting is on a wood panel, and first I paint the panel with the color, and then I apply glue, and then I cover the whole panel with silver leaf. So, and it breaks in a few areas so that there's some color showing underneath, and then I seal it, and then I paint the whole painting on top of it with oil paint. So it's underneath everything, and so in order for me to get areas of dark value, it takes a little bit of time for it to dry. I have to do it in layers to get a really dark value, so areas where there's no silver shining through or gold, and then other areas where there is some.
Good question.
I'm just curious, when did you individually decide that you felt like this was something you wanted to do for a profession? Was there anyone who inspired you, said they loved your art, or was it internal feeling that you had?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question. When did each of you decide you wanted to do this as a profession? Was it something internal, or maybe something somebody said, or what tripped the trigger for you to know this is what you were meant to do, your purpose? I kind of added that part.
Okay. About a year and a half ago, so I was teaching art for a long time, and I really love that, and I really have a passion for teaching. I'm also someone who's going to be 100% about whatever I'm doing, so teaching students didn't really leave me time to really create my own work. So I I had never really considered it as a career. I just knew that I loved it. I think as time went on, I started to realize that it was very important to me that I'm making art and that I'm a better person when I'm creating. So as much as it was a difficult decision to, in some ways, say goodbye to a lot of my students, I knew that it was necessary for my own growth. So it was very challenging, and it's been challenging, but it's extremely rewarding. I'm better for it, and I think the process of painting is something that really changes you, and that's when I realized I had to do it more and do it full time. And when you make a career out of it, you're really dedicated and devoted to it, which is very different than doing it sometimes. And so I knew I needed it in my life that much, that I would do it every day, and that kind of devotion ends up being very transformative for me. And so I would never give that up now. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Your old Mrs. Windsor back in North Situate, Rhode Island, told my mother I had a gift in elementary school. She said, Beth really has a gift. You need to make sure that she gets some instruction outside of public school. So as I said, I grew up in Rhode Island, and my mother convinced my dad that I should be allowed to take some Saturday morning classes at the Rhode Island School of Design, which is a renowned art school. So a friend and I would take the bus 10 miles into Providence. I was about 14 years old, and I went to a figure drawing class. And the gentleman, if you will, that was our model was this old hippie with oil paint up to his elbows and wearing a loincloth, and I'm this little, 14-year-old bright-eyed girl.
In the garden club, no less.
Yes, and garden clubber. And so I would come home with this big sketch pad of charcoal drawings of this nearly naked man. And my mother said, oh, maybe you don't show your dad. But my dad wanted to see what I'd been doing. And he promptly said, you're not going to that damn school. So my mom did convince my dad to allow me to major in art in college, but he said, nobody makes a living as an artist, so you better minor in education. Now, I know he's being practical, and he was a very pragmatic New England guy, and so I did major in art in college. I have a degree in art, but I was not allowed to go to art school. So I did get to make a living as an artist. I do make a living as an artist now. And since my dad died young, I have his old golf club championship trophy in my studio that I keep my brushes in. Because he died young. My mother lived to be 92. She got to see me make a living as an artist. And so it's just always been something I always wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be an artist. And now I am one.
Wow, I love that. I always did art. I loved it, but I've always been someone that has so many different interests and a speckling of ADD, and so it's been. I was pragmatic and thought, oh well, I came from a really conservative background, and even though my dad wasn't and is an entrepreneur. Doing art was never really something that made sense. We didn't know anyone who made a living as an artist, and so I decided, well, I like arguing, I like debate, and so I'll be a lawyer, and I'll just graduate in art because I like that, and then I'll go to law school, and that'll be great. So went to school, and went my first week there. I remember getting there and just being awed, because I realized that there are people who make a living doing art. And I went into illustration and design initially, and I had a great program. They taught me how to draw and to paint, and I was really fortunate to be able to intern with some really phenomenal illustrators, and also was able to apprentice with an incredible painter, both during and after school. And so I graduated and thought, okay, great, I'll go and get a job as an illustrator. I did, and I absolutely hated it. I just was kind of devastated. I had this midlife crisis at 22, and it was just going, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Should I go into law? Should I do art therapy? And I just started exploring my options, and I always came back to that I just missed painting. My parents were very sweet, and they had enrolled me in a watercolor class as a teenager to help me through those troubled teenage years, which it did. And I just missed painting, and so I thought, okay, well, I have to work because I need money, but I'll set up a small still life after I'm done with work, and I'll just start experimenting with my paints. And so that's where my love of still life was really born. Before that, I really hated still life. And, you know, the more I painted, the more I loved it. And the more I just thought, man, I've got to make this a living. And my husband was incredibly supportive. He was always, you know, said, oh, just cut back your hours at work. You don't have to be there 40 hours. Can't you do 30? And then it was, oh, can't you do 20? And then it was, well, can't you just freelance? And so my hours at my day job, which was illustration and design, diminished, and I was so fortunate to be able to have opportunities like coming here and showing in galleries and festivals, and it just kind of organically grew over the years, and it is just a dream to be doing what I'm doing. I love it.
So my path is quite different. As you know now, I was a mechanical engineer. I wanted to be an architect, but my father was very opinionated about how I should live my life, and so I was a mechanical engineer. And I was in the aerospace industry, which is why I was loving the flyby, because it's so cool. And I lived in Southern California and was set, doing my thing. And an earthquake happened there in 1994, and I moved to Arizona, set up a consulting business to do basically what I was doing for the aerospace company and other clients, and I didn't know a single soul here. So I took a watercolor class to meet people. Boy, did that work out well. So I took a class at the Scottsdale Artist School. It was a week-long workshop, and the instructor pulled me aside at the end of the week, and she said, I don't know what it is you do for a living, and frankly, I don't care. This is what you were put on the planet to do. This is your gift. This is your life. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, right. You're so funny. So I became a weekend warrior painter. That was the only workshop class I took to get on this path. I am very studious. I like to learn, so I basically went to school on my own and studied everything I could get my hands on and devoured the material and painted every weekend. Painted, put it under the bed. Painted another one and put it under the bed. Finally, I had a stack under one bed. I had to move to the other bedroom, paint, put it under the bed. Wouldn't show anybody what I did. And finally, one of my girlfriends that I met out here at the gym, we went to dinner one night. She plied me with too much wine and said, pull out those paintings you keep working on. And she was a graphic designer, and she is a graphic designer and a photographer. And I pulled them out, and she started crying. She was so blown away by this pile of paintings. And she said, why don't you sell these? Why don't you do something with them? I'm like, give me a break. Are you kidding me? A lot of them were architecture, buildings and arches and bridges. I love painting architecture, so I kind of did become an architect a little bit. So she convinced me to print a line of greeting cards with her. She was doing a print run for some client. She goes, why don't you gang on the press sheet and we'll do a print run and I'll print out some greeting cards. So for Christmas that year, instead of my annual Christmas letter, I sent out a pack of 4 cards and envelopes tied with a little raffia ribbon to all 100 people on my Christmas card list and said, this is what I've been up to. I got 99 phone calls. Oh my God, you have more paintings like this? Where do I find you? How do I get there? So the response was kind of a slap in the face to tell me that maybe I should take that seriously. So I started dabbling in it, and in 2001, I started doing the Celebration of Fine Art. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Excellent question. So yeah, and all of these women are absolute rock stars, and my fun thing that, along with my marketing team, I get to pick and choose pieces for our ads. And so it just occurred to me that every one of you have work featured in one or another ad version, either this year or last year, and can be found in national and local publications. And aside from that, we have lots of editorial that you'll find, not just these 4, but many of our artists here. And we do love to declare that the notion of starving artist is an old-fashioned notion. These are women who make a living, people in this show make a living, a good living, sharing their gifts with all of you who complete what we all do. You're a big part of why we're here. So I just really want to thank all of you, and I thank the panel, Elizabeth, Beth, Leslie, Heidi. I try to be prompt 501. So